after leaving the Air Force, I wanted to be an educator. I come from a family of educators, and for my father, brothers. So I thought eventually I would come back to education. Now I left the Air Force and actually joined a company as a purchasing manager, but realized very quickly that I had no sense of service. I really wanted to feel like I was making a difference. Helping my community by becoming a teacher was a passion. So I got into teaching like my father, and even though as a young kid I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to follow Dad's footsteps. Here I am.
We are going to be talking about this, the whole venture of Selin. And Selin is all about networking, getting the great minds together and forming a community where we can appreciate each other's achievements and then take it forth and forth. Namaste and welcome to all our viewers right there on our channel, SELINTalks. Selin Club is very proud to present before you yet another charismatic, and what do I say, this is so close to my heart, Captain Daniel Curry. Captain Daniel Curry heads, he's the, you could say he's the top echelon who heads and carries the torch forward for Vega Schools. And he's here joining us today, going to talk to us a lot about how his journey from being a captain with the US Air Force unfolds to becoming the torchbearer of education and maybe, can we say, making of citizens for the world in the making in his own beautiful way. So I would, at Selin, on behalf of the entire team, where we really appreciate scholars, educators, leaders, right here on this platform for their achievement and the milestones that they inspire us to achieve, forming a great community here. So over to you, Captain Daniel Curry. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that great introduction. I'm impressed with myself already.
Well, we can't actually be impressed enough because, we speak about art of living and art of science and art of putting your life and lifestyle and life's values together. But talk about, I'm going to add a very silent HE to that, talk about a heart of a teacher coming from a captain who was in the US Air Force many, many years ago. And then you had a beautiful journey. I would so love to hear it from your, from the way you perceive and you narrate your life story to us. I would be really happy to hear that.
Sure, I can give you a brief on that. So I was a captain in the Air Force. I lived in a lot of places, developed a love for travel and different countries and cultures and people. And ultimately, though, after leaving the Air Force, I wanted to be an educator. I come from a family of educators, and for my father, brothers. So I thought eventually I would come back to education. Now I left the Air Force and actually joined a company as a purchasing manager, but realized very quickly that I had no sense of service. I really wanted to feel like I was making a difference. And increasing shareholder value did not get me out of bed in the morning. But helping my community by becoming a teacher was a passion. So I got into teaching like my father. And even though as a young kid I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to follow Dad's footsteps. Here I am in education. And what's beautiful about it is, for me, I have such an overwhelming sense of contribution. It's a blessing for me to work with kids, to know that I'm able to have some kind of impact on their growth and formation. And that's why I love what I do.
Well, wonderfully put. And we couldn't be more grateful and thankful to people like you in the world, who have a vision, and I wouldn't say it's completely selfless, because I think in somewhere down the line, we kind of topple and tumble into a lot of things till the time we reach a phase in our life where it becomes selfless. Initially, the journey probably would be like, where am I going from after leaving, the services? And though you did have a vision and wanted to, but I am going to actually nudge you a little bit on that front. I mean, were you really sure that you're going to be like getting into education and hitting it off well?
I really, I thought I would leave it. I thought I would leave and go into the corporate world. Again, even at
Mhm.
that point, I thought really for me, it was when I'm 50 plus, now I'll go be a teacher with some life experience that I can share with children. But after experiencing the corporate world and realizing, what am I waiting for? Why don't I jump right now into education? And I started teaching. And then after a few years of teaching, I realized all the experiences I had as an officer in the Air Force really led me more into administration. So after a few years of teaching, then I became a principal and so on and so on. So that's well, also my love of international travel led me and my family into taking on international education as well.
I'm going to ask you a question which you probably are asked all the time, though I do believe wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. But invariably, this is going to be something that probably would be tweaked to you from time to time. And I would be not very surprised by it because culturally, from where you come to where you are right now, would be way too different. So, did you, I mean, in the most candid manner,
Mm.
without really making it look very glorious, did you at any point in time feel that this is a battle, which is an uphill task?
Yeah, definitely both, I would say, in education, but to be honest, more so in the international aspects where you're going into a foreign culture, you're going into a foreign system, um, and there are struggles because you have to learn to be so adaptable and flexible. Every society has its own ideas about education. Parents have different expectations of education, and as I've gone from, west to east, now from through the Middle East and now to India, I can see where the similarities are. I can see where the differences are. But one thing that's universal for me that really makes all those difficulties fade away is children. The purity and the joy of children recharges me every day. So whether they're Indian children or Arab children, Turkish children, whatever it is, they have the same smiles, the same cares, and they're just fun. And so for me, that's worth all of the challenges of language and of diet and culture and all those things and traffic.
And do and do you even realize that the children understand the language of love without even speaking of it? So
Yeah.
I'm so sure they would be attracted to you magnetically if you're going to be giving it to them genuinely from the way you conduct and let go of a lot that may not seem to be right and really nurture. If you come from a space, I do believe more of when you want to kind of, I won't use the word correction, but when you come from a space of wanting to lead or guide for future benefit and not necessarily from a space of anger. When you can see beyond the horizon and then guide the child accordingly, I think the child kinds of taps in that energy and being relevant to times, today's day and age, the children are way too different from what probably you have gone through the journey seeing. So how different do you feel that the new gen is, especially post-COVID? Do you find a lot of issues that may have creeped in with the children's mindsets and everything else? Too many questions
Yeah.
out there, but there's so
No,
much
that's okay.
connect.
Yes, there's, just off the top of my head on the issue of COVID, we do see children who've lost self-confidence. They've gained more fear about being out in public, about public speaking, um, interpersonal relationships. And so for us, that's what we really want to focus on because that's that's a life skill that they need to have, uh, that empathy and the collaboration, the things that we work on. So, but I do see here, just like in some other countries I've been, there's a difference between what parents have experienced in their school years and what their children are experiencing. And we're in this transition time because great things are happening with NEP and with a move towards more progressive education, but our parents don't know what that's like. They haven't experienced it. And so we're struggling to make that transition and to help the parents realize, the best thing for kids is to support them and to give them a voice about what are their interests, what are their desires, what do they like to do, instead of saying, and this is common to more than, I've seen it here in India, I've seen it in other countries where there's an expectation of the kinds of careers that are okay for their kids. Like my child must do this or my child, and now it's saying, no, really, let's work. Even a small child, if you show them that you care about them and that you want you want to know what they want to know, what they want to do, what they're interested in. And if you have that kind of conversation with them, they open up. Uh, but now we have parents, so if the kids are getting that kind of they're getting that in school, but is it at home? The parents are more directive. We have parents coming to us saying, "How come you could be so patient with them? How come they do what you ask them to do, but when I shout at them to do something, they don't do it?" So now we have this difference between, well, in this new generation, like you've said, they're going to be more and more used to having their own voice and choosing their own direction and being treated not as I'm the parent and you need to obey me, but more about we're in this together, you and me, parent and child, and what's going to be your future and how can we get you there.
No, I just love the way you've put it. You've literally held my hand and taken me where I wanted to hold your hand and take you. I think I so believe in the trilogy of teacher, parent, and the institution where children go. I think that entire triangle needs to be met in all the right lines and angles for a great understanding. And once that is met with, it becomes much more easier. So you cannot be just training one faculty and not be really working on the other one, because then somewhere down the line, they are going to go back to the same badgering or number game. But then again, Dan, I'm going to just say it as blatantly. It's a lot to do with the system change, which is going to be slow but progressive. And,
Yes.
instead of asking the child what he is going to become at the end of the day, asking purposeful questions like, what would be your purpose, as Jay Shetty very beautifully put it in one of his videos, which I love so much. Dr. Sir Ken Robinson himself has very many times brought it up in so many of his talks about how we are unintentionally trying to preen and, cut down the creativity in children. So how best at, your end do you think you keep that nurturing that value for children going?
Yes. Yeah, that is. And creativity is something that we know from our experience can be whittled away from a child over time in school. It can be kind of taken out of them, or it can be encouraged. And in the progressive kind of setting, our children are center stage versus the teacher being center stage. So we ask them questions. So like you said, rather than saying, what do you want to be? We ask about purpose, or we say, what kind of person do you want to be? Who do you want to be? We're asking them leading questions, and they come back with their own answers that are sometimes beautiful and poignant, and sometimes hilarious, because you never know what a child's going to say. But by asking them questions, the whole idea is, instead of telling them things, we're asking them things, we're guiding them. And so whether it's in a project, we say, how would you like to show us what you've learned from this last couple of weeks? Do you want to create a poster? Do you want to write a poem? Do you want to make a video? So we are asking them to think about, what are the things how do you want to show us what you know? And we give them that leeway to make those choices, and they come up with some incredible things that we would never have thought about.
In a way, manner of speaking, you're co-creating situations and moving forward, co-creating solutions as well, I assume. I mean, do you ask them, if this goes, if this all goes out wrong, how is it? Would you like to be reprimanded or find a way of correction? Would you do that?
Sure. Everything becomes a dialogue, and they learn that failing or not getting something right is just the normal part of the process. And so you can't be scared of it. Now, we know that parents want their children to get 100% of everything every time. And sometimes we have to tell the parents, no, we want to see your child fail, because they need to learn how to recover from that, and to learn that it's not a big deal. And in fact, if you're not failing, you're not really trying the first time, So we really encourage them we frame our approach in terms of problem-based learning, which is saying, look, if the air quality is bad, why is that? It's something that they care about. So in a middle school class, maybe that comes up. Why is their quality bad? What it's so bad today? Why do we have to close school? What is air quality? What makes it bad or good? How do you measure it? Then they learn the science behind it. Then we have them do statistics on it. Then we have them do cultural studies on it, on the politics or on the geography of the airflow. And then we talk about, so in that there's so much richness for them to say, you research and now you tell me, how would you solve it? We ask them questions that don't have any one right answer. So they come back with, this is what I would do if I was in charge, or this is how I would solve it. And this is what's good about my solution, and this is what's not so good about my solution. And then we have just those kind of rich conversations where we're really relying on them. Now, and I tell parents, look, if we had had that opportunity as kids to grow up doing this, imagine how much more effective we would be in our jobs today if that was how we just typically looked at the world.
I'm not so far behind. For all you know, I may just come and join school as a student. It sounds so interesting. In fact, even growing some plants would probably help a lot. And I always keep telling children in the restaurant, especially with people who I'm comfortable after an exchange of smiles, if they're wasting water, I kind of try and see if there is any kind of a plant around where they can go and water the plant rather than leave that water. So I think these are little things which we can, what you, I understand, are doing with the entire system is probably, sowing the seed for that little acorn to become magnificent oak tree, I assume, and magnificence is something which comes from just hard work and the dedication, keeping consistency going, perseverance and patience. So I guess, even the number game that we all get wrapped up in because of the system calling out and screaming and shouting, with, I hope the changes come in 50 years too soon. I don't know. 50 years still looks like a flash which will go by. But then we as at Selin also it's an endeavor for us to kind of keep getting our community stronger, to understand this better from each other and find fantastic ways for a win-win situation through this all, rather than sit and point fingers and do the blame game. So in our own little way, we can, kind of do our own changes. So what exactly do you think? Are your teachers at the same plane with your vision, and how do you think, not just your teachers from school, but how do you think, would you like to kind of comment upon how teachers can come on board? Because, some of them have experiences which are over so many years with so many changes in the system. One thing I remember going through a training program with teachers and asking them about how they feel, and their biggest concern was their confidence level to take the program through with an online format would be something that they were challenged, because the children know so much more and they're so much more quicker, and then I'm at a loss, and they were the bestest. We shouldn't take it away from them, but then how do you get them on board and keep that consistency going?
Right. Well, that's always a challenge, to get the right people, and not everyone has had the opportunity to go through maybe that kind of training. But what we look for mainly is, do they have the right heart? Do they have the right outlook, the love for kids, and are they open to learning? And then we can guide them and teach them. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of work with our teachers. We call them learning leaders. So, they come and we train them. We give a lot of support. But yes, there are teachers who may come from more traditional settings, and they come with great experience, great subject matter knowledge, but we look primarily for the heart. How do you interact with kids? So I don't ask questions about how do you solve this math problem, because I assume that they have subject matter knowledge. I ask them questions about their character, about what they love, about their passions. And if you get that combination right, you can give them the other skills.
This sounds so fancy, and this is just tugging at my heart. But, when you're really in this real scenario with the children going all crazy over you, this to apply is another call altogether. So, as I always use, I do believe you're not really teaching a child a subject. You're just teaching a child, whether it's to sit straight, whether it's to close your mouth, whether it's to make eye contact, or not, to have their hands in their pockets when they're talking to elders. So it's all an amalgamation. You cannot just say, this is my, this is where my lines are. For a teacher, it is my kids, and we can take them all in. So this must be kind of challenge in some of the ways where probably I'm looking at, when you have children who probably require a little bit more attention, if you know what I'm trying to say. So do you have a piece of advice for how do you deal with something like that? You have children who are the children who come from the resource background, or you need to give them a little bit more attention.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think if you structure a classroom that's differentiated, then you're going to already have students on either end of the spectrum, those who grasp it quickly and those who need extra support. So the key is in working with our teachers in our classrooms to say all children are somewhere on the scale. And so we need to think about not just aiming for the middle, but we need to think about how can I create something that's a challenge for the students on one end of the spectrum and is doable and still challenging, right, for the people on the other end of the spectrum. If you ask open-ended questions and let the child lead, they can answer to the best of their ability. So you may get a very complex and well thought out answer from someone who really has mastered this concept. And you may get an open-ended question, may get a good answer from a child who has, resource needs, but it shows that they either understand or don't understand. So you really have to teach, across the spectrum, differentiate. Of course, we have in our school, we have special needs learners, and we have a program, and they get extra pull-out support. But fundamentally, in our classroom, they are fully included. So whether or not they're diagnosed with something, or whether or not they just struggle with math or with a particular subject, we work with each child to say, uh, to find out what they need. And I think by having the approach where they're giving answers and they're showing what they know and they're making decisions, we get to whether a child gets it or doesn't get it, and then we can redirect as needed. So
Oh, that's very well answered, and I really do feel that we always question. This is another thing that keeps coming up. There was one conference that I had attended somewhere, and somebody had brought it up. What do you do for special needs children? And I kind of raised my voice just to ask: when you say special needs, you do realize every child has one, and some are latent, and some are overt. So the ones which are overt are the ones which we can tap in and kind of really bring to the fore. I'm talking more emotional and mental ones.
yes.
Children nowadays are going through quite a bit on their own. And the intangibles which they can't really pinpoint and tell is something that you need to pick from the behavior, which we do understand as educators, and we've understood a particular format and pattern. But do you find that there is a growing need for attention where mental health is concerned, where children are concerned, and how
Yes.
best as educators or mentors could we really tell them that it's not a rat race, or you don't really need to be the best always, or look the best in your Insta pics, or as even we as adults, we don't need to always look good in our DP.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And one is that, there are societal expectations around this and acceptance. In different countries I've been in, some just don't talk about mental health. Like that's just not a thing that's okay to openly discuss. And in some places, that's just a normal thing. Now, over the past 20 years, I can say I've seen far more issues and more, whether or not it's because we are better at diagnosing, but far more incidents of autism and other things over the years. But in general, after the pandemic, I think worldwide, mental health is a big concern in learners who feel hopeless, who don't see a way out, who just feel lost. And that's really where my concern is for those kids. What can we do? You know, we also have to be sensitive to parents who may or may not be open to having that conversation. So how do you delicately bring up? Now we have school counselors, and we can say, look, mom and dad, we're going to do some counseling with your child. I think she's been having some struggles and that sort of thing. It's great when they bring it up to us and say, can you do some counseling sessions? But to ease a parent into the fact that, hey, your child may be struggling, and that's okay. I mean, some children struggle, and they're facing some big issues. And what's the response? Fortunately, many parents, circle the wagons and say, well, what can we do and how can we support? And And some parents just don't want to have the conversation and say, no, she's fine. She'll be fine. So it like you said, it's this three-way conversation between parent, school, and child to make sure we're all working for the benefit of the child.
Yeah, and strategizing that is not an easy task. From what I do see over the years, as you rightly said, sometimes it's an open parent who would like to speak of and a rebellious student. And sometimes the teachers just close in and want to just, look their best. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that it just could be a scenario like that, unless we all come on the same plane to understand that everything is for the betterment of the child and nothing that we have at a personal stake to kind of, cheer about or feel bad about. I think that which way an institution really can move forward in many ways. And
and if I can actually just, you mentioned there at the end about social media. I think that has caused a lot of problems. And like you said, even for adults, because if you only ever see the highlights of someone else's life, then you tend to think their life is wonderful and only highlights. It's only beautiful pics and beautiful meals and beautiful vacations. And so if I personally struggle, there must be something wrong with me because all these other people that I see on social media are having the time of their life. So I must be really screwed up. So that's the danger of only looking at the best around you and not realizing you're not going to see their profile pic of when they get up in the morning, those kind of things. So, but that becomes their reality, right? That's what they're bombarded with, and now they feel they have to keep up with that and put up this front that I'm fantastic and my life is fantastic.
yeah, I so agree with that. And to some extent, then I think we created this. We have to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
We created the society for them, and we have to finish it too. So so the people are. I mean, I'm being as open about it. Coming from the black and white era, when we did not have color television, and then moving into the space that we did with the bold and the beautiful and all of that coming into the arena and the zone and everything that is in the limelight is like, wow. We need to bust that bubble. Body image being one, body shaming being one. I think those are the things that we really need to tap in and tell the children. So do you have this kind of a conversation with the children from time to time?
We do.
Okay.
And that's something that we didn't have to deal with, but in today's world, you have ongoing conversations with kids about cybersecurity, about cybercrime, about having good habits around use of the internet and how to filter information. When we were kids, it was about how in the world am I going to find this information? If you had a project. Now I have thousands of pages of information. How do I make sense of it all? So we do have a lot of conversations with our kids that are not things that we ever had to worry about before.
Well, I think one of the things that's important is the diet that we take in. So exactly this the mental feeding and the visual intake is another diet that we're kind of consuming and getting consumed by at times, if I may add. And I think a balance of it is important. I think the future is technology. It is the screen time. It is a lot to do with it. But, giving them the choices and setting boundaries is something where we need to kind of have a conversation going from time to time. And speaking of which, I come back to my very favorite topic, and I'm going to ask you in a bit about your favorites. Tell me, how do you tackle the whole requirement and need of body shaming with nutrition in place and longevity plans for the future, and how do your children even realize that what they may be trying to achieve on the outside may be actually harming them from the inside, so much so that it could lead to problems, where it comes to your memory and
yes. Yes, no, it's and again, I think so many things, doing BMI tests on children. There's someone always has a good reason for saying you need to do certain things, but they may not think about the consequences. And so we do see consequences where whenever you come up with a number that you're going to measure, there's going to be discussion around that number and chasing a number and what's good and bad versus, the healthier approach is all kids are going to grow at different rates. All kids are going to have different body sizes. Not everyone is going to be the Instagram model that we see, and that's not even healthy. And that's probably photoshopped anyway. So you know, how do we get them to see with that critical eye and just be okay with where they are? I think the less attention we pay to it, um, and careful too about as we counsel our kids in our classrooms, they have regular counseling sessions. We talk about empathy, and if you say something to somebody, um, then that may be something that they carry for a very long time. Now, I remember as a kid, everyone gets called names, and I got called a name, and I still remember those names. And that's been, you know,
Yes.
decades ago. Yeah. So it's thinking more about that, about kindness, and less focus on, we want them not to focus on those things that divide us, like, comparing my body, their body, this body. It's more about, are you a kind person? And are you kind to someone? And are you happy with that? Also, we do a lot of like healthy stuff. And it's silly to say, never eat ice cream, never eat pizza, never eat, you know what I mean? Like, let's be realistic. We say that's sometimes food. There's all the time food, and there's sometimes food, and it's about making choices. And the more we engage them in the conversation, like you've said, it's not us telling them do this and don't do that and this is okay. It's engaging them in the conversation, whether it's okay, you can have this on the menu. What are the menu options? What do you feel like eating? Uh, you know, is that something we had that yesterday? It's having a conversation. Is it the same conversation happens if it's screen time. Talking to a child and say, what's a reasonable amount of screen time you think you should have every day? And you have a discussion about it. And they say, okay, let's make a plan. We'll agree to it. That may be more screen time than I wanted. It's less screen time than you wanted, but let's make a plan and let's see how it goes. Now they have ownership in that, and they know the reason why. A lot of times kids don't know the reason why we're doing things, and so it has no impact, and they don't really care. But if they know the reason why, because your health is important, because your mental health is important, because, you know, and they're part of that conversation and they know the reasons why. I think that's a difference in generations from when we were kids, because our parents probably didn't tell us any reason why. They just told us what we could not do. But I think engaging them in the decision making makes a big difference.
I so think so too. And I think having a healthy relationship with food, because that's what you're going to be consuming all your life, and stop. There's so much on the media out there. I sometimes feel there's no point having all the credentials under your belt and having the greatest of profession right there and then suffering health wise. So, just teaching them how to sit straight and, take that beautiful deep breath in and, actually get your mental health in spaces. It comes so much more handy than just earning the bucks and actually sitting there and then suffering and catering for all the medication, God willing not. So I think this conversation can really go places. We should be laying emphasis on nutrition, children, and mental health. I think that we've already touched base upon. So I'm going to come back to food because, we are in, I happen to be in a beautiful land in God's own country. They are going to be celebrating food to the hilt. It's that time of the year when they celebrate Onam, and I want to really get to understand Captain Daniel Curry a little bit more. What are your favorite foods then? Having traveled so much, what kind of food do you really enjoy?
Well, I would say my favorite food of all time would be, I'd have to say Lebanese food.
Oh, wow.
Kind of Lebanese, Turkish, that kind of Mediterranean. I just love the food. I love the spices, but so much food, especially in this region, there's similarities, there's just variations. I like spicy food. We love the food here in India because there's so much variety. And it's funny because often people assume here that they want to give me something very bland. And when I say, no, I want spice, then they put a little bit. And I say, no, 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 really, I like it spicy. They'll put a little bit more. I'm like, no, you know, and then they're all worried that they're gonna damage me somehow. But no, the food for me, food, culture, language, that's all part of the experience around the world. So, if you come to India, you've got to have familiarity with the food, and that's going to help you understand the different cultures and the different areas, and so much diversity just in India, even in food and clothing. And I spent a lot of years in the UAE where all the women wear black and all the men wear white. And so it's fantastic coming here, and I just see a riot of color on the saris and on the clothes, and just absolutely love it. So it's appreciating those differences and being willing to explore and sometimes be wrong, sometimes regret the the things that I've eaten and think, well, that's not my favorite. But um, yeah, no, you've got to be open to those experiences.
I assume the iridescent colors that you have in your personality is all to do with the kind of travels that you've had. And
Mm,
you've soaked in the culture so beautifully, Dan. So
mm,
I must
thank
really,
you.
there's something to take back here. And we all do. We all have that notion about stereotyping or having a framework around a particular type that they would not like spice or they would not like they are more coffee drinkers than tea drinkers. And, I mean, that all happens with the kind of conditioning yet again.
Yeah,
So, and as I feel that our boundaries and lines are just, fading away, we don't have that, we're just getting to become global citizens of the world. We cannot really, at the end of the day, take it away. But culturally and deep down in the DNA, India does definitely have a way of showing love, and that's through food. So if you do visit my home too, you'll be
mm,
fed until the time you say enough. That's how much we show our
yeah.
love with food.
Well, I can tell you the first wedding I went to in Kerala, we the night before we went over to the bride's house, and I could not eat fast enough. They were piling it on my plate faster than I could take it off my plate. And we've been raised in the, at least from my experience, was clean your plate. Show that you can't leave food there. That's insulting. So I was working so hard to finish, and they just kept piling it on. It was like it was a battle. I was trying to show that yes, no, it's great. I love it. I'm gonna keep eating, but finally I had to throw in the towel. But but it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so attentive and so wanted me to taste everything. It was great.
Yeah, but I'm going to bite my tongue on that one. I don't think this just happens in India. I think they also have their own way of showing their love in different ways. I mean, the more interior you go to any country, they have
Mm,
their own local way and, their typical way, unless you're touching base with a big city. A city
mm,
life is
right.
very different. So if we really go deep into, I've had the best of experiences where I've been fed out beyond India to like, enough, I can't no more. And that brings me to the turning point where you've been in the Air Force and you have been there, done that. Any of the experiences do you think you cherish and would like to share with us? Do you share your experiences with the
I
children?
I do. Yes, I do. And I think the more that you travel, and maybe it's cliche or trite, but the more you realize people are fundamentally the same. They want the same things in life. They 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 want to have a nice family, and they want to have uh, have a good paying job and to care for themselves. And it's about family. Now, India, I would say, is very strong family oriented, um, and I appreciate that. Those values are very important. But it's seeing past the color of the skin or the color or the shape of the eyes or the clothes that they wear. When I first went to the Middle East, this would have been, oh, in the mid 90s. Should I say that? I'm that old, but my first time there, no, this was in actually it was 1990. It was anyway. I was intimidated by seeing the women in the hijab and the men looking severe, and so you want to just emotionally you want to kind of back away a little bit. But they're just like everywhere, they're warm and friendly, and so it's looking past some of those differences and just loving people for who they are. I think that for me has been the biggest thing. Is I really I enjoy the differences, and I want to talk to people about the differences rather than feeling like, oh, that's something different. I'm not comfortable with it. Um, Now maybe it makes me nosy or bold, where I go up to people and want to talk to them. But most people are happy to talk about their life and their experience, and I try to learn languages. My Arabic is pretty good. My Turkish is not so great. Little French, Hindi. I'm working on it, but but there's so much in that to show respect and for me to be able to try to speak in someone's heart language to them and show them that respect, I think makes just great bonds. We've made such great friends everywhere we've been. Just meeting people. That's for me what it's been all about, is making those personal connections and just seeing the variety here in the world, and that we're all the same. We all just love our kids and we want to see the best thing for them. And so yeah, that's for
Yeah,
me.
I just so love the way you say what you do, but you see the world as you are.
Mm,
So I'm sure you're a magnanimous person with, a vision which soaks it all in, and you love the cultures and you just take it all in, being, I mean, part of the world and not really having barriers and, of course, questioning. I think we all are just nothing but stories, and each one has a separate and a different one. And it's wonderful to get inspired and seek energy, listening to
mm.
each other's story, just the way we have with you, Dan. It's been such a wonderful conversation. But before I let you go, I want you to share with us, though you must have heard so much about it and you must have spoken so much about it. I did go through, a little bit of what you kind of needed to speak about the NEP. But very quickly, would you like to just touch base? You look very happy with the NEP that's going to be coming up. So it would be very nice to
Yes.
round it off.
Yes. So, in a nutshell, for me, the highlights are we're moving away from what I consider low-level understanding, which is rote memory, and moving towards critical thinking and understanding and application. So if I know if I can recite something, that's one level of understanding. But if I can apply that knowledge to a new situation, that means I've mastered it. So NEP is looking at more experiential learning, more, even recently, we saw CBSE put on a problem-based learning session for teachers. So they're moving this direction where it's not about the traditional method of transfer of knowledge from the teacher who has the information to the child who needs to remember the information. It's more about helping the child learn how to think, how to apply things, how to solve problems, and all around character. So I think it's a broader vision of education than has been the case traditionally. So character education, progressive learning, child-centered. So for us, we're very happy to see NEP kind of go that direction, because I think the research shows that's an effective way for kids to learn. We see it where it's been done in other places, so it'll work. It'll have results.
There's a lot of light. I won't say down the tunnel. I think the tunnel has been opening up gradually. So I won't call it a tunnel, but there's a lot of light that comes in through this policy. So we are so looking forward to it. Hope to make the bestest of the citizens for the world, Dan. And I
Yes.
don't feel like letting you go at all. It's been such a great conversation. And I think it's path-breaking in its own way. It's very inspiring also, the one thing that I do assume totally is, coming from the discipline that you do, being in the forces, I'm sure you have a lot of discipline silently laid out. I can just imagine walking into your premise and have the children be absolutely to the T with their manners. I so look forward to connecting with you at some date soon, and probably interviewing and having a chit chat one-on-one. That would be delightful. So, parting words from you? Anything
Just
you'd like?
just thank you. It has been a good conversation, and it's good to be able to talk about just the underpinnings of why we do what we do and what's really important. And there are challenges, but we're passionate and we feel like we can see this change happen. We can make it happen. And I'll say that although I have lots of discipline background, I'm happy to admit that for example, when I walk in the lunchroom, I am mobbed by hundreds of children who just run up to me yelling and want to hug me and give me high fives. And that's for me, that's the best part of my day. So
That's children, and that
yes,
speaks of the love they have for you. So I mean, we just soak it all in, soak it all in. You're
yes.
never going to go out of their heads. Do you realize that?
Mm,
For
mm.
more than one reason that stands out is because they would be associating you with somebody who's come from abroad, and you see I'm saying it blatantly. I mean,
Mm.
another person other than who looks like mama, papa, uncle, auntie, and the likes. And here there is just another gentleman who is cherubian and he's so charismatic. So obviously, and then somebody so cool. Children miss that. They miss. As we grow old, I think, they miss that friend that they have in the adult, because then we become more mindful of telling them how it should be rather than understanding and not forgetting how it was for us and how we would like it to be. So yeah, you're right. I think at the end of the day, they're all looking for just love, fun, merriment, and who doesn't want to have a party all their life long? So
that's right. It keeps me young and happy and energized. So that's great.
Yes, love knows no language, Captain Daniel. I'm going to be parting from here, thanking you so very much and sending you so much love on behalf of Team Selin. It's been such a joyful anticipation to just sit and have a conversation with you, and you've actually crossed that level a lot more. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Aradhana. It's nice talking with you, and hope to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.